Hey everybody! I'm here today to talk to you about 7 tips for learning to drive when you're older. So if you're learning to drive when you're older, these are 7 tips for you. Let's get right into this. I'm going to try and keep this relatively short and sweet. Tip number 1, and older can be whatever you define it as. For some people, sorry, my finger's bleeding a little bit here. Just going to get that blood off. But for some people that might be like 25, for some people that might be like 70, it's kind of up to you. You're going to define that yourself. But essentially, here are the 7 tips if you're learning to drive when you're older. And tip number 1 is to understand that older is wiser. It's not a negative thing. A lot of people think that learning to drive when you're older is a negative thing, but when you're older, you're definitely wiser. Older is wiser. Use it as a positive, okay? Tip number 2 is to try not to be overly cautious. Now, here's the thing. When you're younger, you're a little bit more risky. You can take more risks just in terms of the way that sort of life is, right? And when you're older, you're more likely to be more cautious. And being cautious is a good thing, but try not to be overly cautious. You know, I have 4 young kids right now. So when I was younger and I was just single, not married, no kids, you know, like, yeah, I was way more likely to be able to take a risk or to want to take any sort of risk. Whereas now I played super safe because I got 4 or 5, including my wife, 4 or 5 lives that rely on me. So yeah, but try not to be overly cautious. Be cautious, just try not to be overly cautious, okay? That's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is to try to not overthink things. This goes hand in hand with what I just said because essentially as you get older, you have a tendency to overthink things. You see things differently. You tend to be more likely to overthink things. Try to not overthink things. As a driver, you can't overthink things. It's got to be based on instinct and quick thoughts, quick gestures. So don't overthink things. Try to avoid overthinking things. Tip number 4 is don't judge yourself. You might be like, I'm learning to drive when I'm older. You know, like, why did I do this? Don't judge yourself. Who cares? Not a big deal. You're still doing it. You know, I've talked to people who've learned to drive when they're 80. And honestly, I congratulate them. It's great. What's the difference between learning to drive when you're 40 or learning to play golf when you're 40? What's the difference, right? I don't know how to play golf. Well, I'm not great. I mean, I don't know how to swing a club and I know the rules. I've done a couple video tutorials on it. I will do a few more. But, you know, what's the difference between learning how to drive and learning how to do anything else when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 70, when you're 25? Doesn't matter. So don't judge yourself for that. Tip number 5, be happy that your insurance will be less. As you get older, your insurance will be less. It's just a matter of fact, okay? It's because you're less of a risky person, as I just said before. So essentially, you know, when I was a kid, my insurance, I bought my first car and insured it I bought my first car when I was like, just turned 17, but I didn't insure it. I think I bought my first car and insured it when I was like, my second car technically. So my first car I bought when I was 17. I just turned 17, I believe, or I was right at the end of 16. And I didn't insure it. I modified it, and then I realized insurance was going to be too much, and I sold it. I got a little bit older, and I think I was about to turn 18. I was still 17, but I was about to turn 18, give or take. And I bought my second car and I insured it because I went into electrical as an electrical apprentice. Believe it or not, I was an electrical apprentice for 4 weeks before I quit and went back to school, and then ended up going to graduating college, graduating university, graduating teachers college, and becoming a full-time elementary school teacher. And now I'm basically a full-time content creator. So yeah, I did a whole bunch of different paths, but essentially my insurance when I was almost 18 was, I think, $4,900 a year. It was astronomical on a 1991 Honda Civic CX with no power steering and no air conditioning. So literally, it was astronomically high. Okay, I'm sitting in my driveway right now. My neighbor's just going for a little stroll. You maybe just saw her walk by. One of my neighbors that lives a couple doors down. Anyways, now, I don't know what I pay for insurance. I think I pay like maybe $1,000 a year or something like that. And that's me being insured under 2 vehicles, right? I think myself and my wife together pay like $2,200 or something like that. So, yeah, your insurance will be less. Be happy about that. That's tip number 5. Sorry about the long story and the extra information, but you know what? Figured I might as well tell you a little bit about myself as well. Tip number 6. Make time to practice even if it's hard. I'll tell you why. If I had to go get my license now and I had to practice driving with 4 young kids, it would be unbelievably difficult. But you got to make time to practice. No matter how hard it is, you got to make time to practice, okay? And last but not least is tip number 7, which is to be super nice to the driving test examiner. I'll tell you why I'm saying this. As we get older, we have a tendency to say more things more freely without thinking about them. Meaning, you know, when you're younger, you're going to be nice out of of like being worried, right? You know, you don't want to get that person angry. And when you get older, you're like, I'm just going to say what I want, you know? And if you're at the age where you're saying what you want, don't just say what you want to the driving test examiner. Don't go put the driving test examiner down. Don't really question them, right? Be super nice to the driving test examiner when you're going for your driving test, okay? Hold your thoughts back, your negative thoughts back, and just be nice. Just zip it for a little bit, okay? And keep the thoughts in here that are negative, and you can say them to your spouse, your neighbor after. You can tell your stories after. And that's once you get your license and you pass, okay? And that's it. Those are essentially 7 tips for learning to drive when you're older. If you like this video, explanation/tip video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.